Welcome to my next Mythic Plus dungeon. This is going to be
These caves
Underrot.
must lead to the legendary Uldir.
This dungeon is not too bad. This is a +6. When that mob charges, you definitely do not want to stand in front of it because it's, I think, almost a one-shot. You got to be careful with the ticks because they do explode on death. I think Underrot's pretty easy, however there are some spots that kind of really suck. Not this boss, but the boss after this has a very pain in the butt set of mobs. Basically what happens is each mob has their own special effect.
I do not have a target.
One mob causes a stun that has to be healed or dispelled off. One mob has a focus. One mob does a frontal cone. It can really suck if you have a tank that pulls a bunch of them, and a lot of tanks like to pull a bunch of them. It's not a bad thing. It's just if you have a bunch of the mobs and get really unlucky, and say have like the flying spiders, which I'll show whenever we get there, all focus the same person, that person is doomed for death.
I require a target.
I think this actually is a key upgrade for me too. Yeah, I did a Underrot 5. This boss is pretty easy. This boss basically summons an ad, you gotta kill him. Boss also does a frontal cone, just don't stand in front of it. That is the frontal cone. It does a lot of damage. I think that was the frontal. No, that is the frontal cone, actually, I was incorrect. And it does a lot of, as you can see by the priest's health, it does a lot of damage. That is the mob you have to kill. Not too bad in terms of boss mechanics.
My blood forgone.
Now this is the ads I'm talking about. That one has a fixate. That one has a frontal cone. The maggots. The living rots have an AoE. There's more of the ticks. They explode on death, I believe. Some of the stuff can be interrupted, some of the stuff can't be. For example, that's the frontal cone AoE, Rotten Bite. That cannot be. Those little flowers give a debuff on someone that I was talking about has to be dispelled, healed off. It can be interrupted, but if you pull enough of them, you can't interrupt them enough. They also put some stuff on the ground, but that stuff really isn't important unless you're melee. As a tank, this is where the real skill shows because a lot of tanks know what to pull, what not to pull in terms of mass numbers. You do have to be careful because you really do not want to pull all those little flowers. I did that by accident last time I was here. It can cause a wipe if you're not careful. And that was a little buff that has to be cured off. Nicely enough, these mobs can be slowed. And that is what you don't want happening, because all those getting pulled. I should have interrupted that. If you have a priest healer, it's not as bad because they have mass dispel. So if a couple people get hit by those, it's not gonna like completely wipe your group. This would be a pretty easy pull. At least the next 4 mobs, maybe even those. As long as you use stuns, these should die pretty quick. I did forget to mention, these mobs do have a silence. That's another thing that can kind of make them dangerous if they happen to silence a healer. At this level, you do not have to run from them. Not really, unless you get a couple on you. I guess those can be stunned. However, I would not waste a stun on that. Mostly because it's pretty easy to dodge. You just don't stand in front of it. I'd rather save the stun for that mob. I might have to swap those around so I can actually use my silence a little bit better. Having your stun and silence in a very easily reachable place is kind of important. That way you can get a silence really quick. Usually I would run, but normally I would just pop a defensive. This boss is not too bad. It's a little bit difficult if people don't do the fight correctly. Basically, this boss has a charge that drops a lot of little bugs on the ground. You have to stomp on them. If you do not stomp on them, these little bugs right here, it spawns ads. It's not too bad, but later on in the fight, it can get out of hand if you're not careful. You also don't want to get hit by that charge because it does do a decent amount of damage. The one nice thing about shamans and druids is you can go Ghost Wolf, or I think it's called Travel Form as a druid. And usually they can kind of handle that themselves if need be.
I must get closer.
I believe those also do an AoE when they die. That's one of the reasons why you just don't want to leave them to their own devices. Usually the tank kind of handles those. And the boss is done. At a level 6, you can still kind of force your way through the boss without having to worry too much about mechanics. However, the next boss is very mechanically heavy, and if you don't do it, even on a 6, you can easily die. I keep forgetting that I moved my stun. The little worms, just you have to silence them. Silence or stun. They do an AoE that throws and it stacks in damage every time it hits. If you pull it by itself, it's pretty easy. If you accidentally pull it, because some people can't see it because it's in the ground like that, then it can be an issue. That's the little stun I was talking about, the little earthquake looking thing. The only hard part about these mobs coming up
What manner of beast
is
this?
that they drop a totem and you have to kill the totem. It does a lot of damage. I think it's called a death totem. And if it goes off, it does a lot of damage. These mobs also do like, I think an AoE that you have to knock. That one right there, which increases damage taken. And that was a totem I completely forgot to do. Now this is definitely, I plan to hero on this boss. If there's any boss you want to hero on, it's usually this one. What'll happen is the tank has to face the mob away. Shockwave will kill some of those. Then 2 DPS will be targeted. They have to, like this, and then they have to stand in the middle of these mushrooms. Wait until it goes off, and then just move. Try not to get hit by the little clouds. Also try not to get by that, because in hierarchies that will kill you. If you're going to wipe, it's probably going to be in this one. The reason why you want to kill the mushrooms, I almost forgot to say, at one point this person will start channeling and basically erupt all the mushrooms, giving you that little buff, debuff you saw right there. If it stacks up really high, it'll basically kill everybody.
I've never seen that kind of corruption before. It might be connected to Uldir. Let's hurry and find out.
That debuff does enough damage that it's even sometimes you're better off to like have someone run over them than you are to have them explode and just sacrifice their life.
I need to target something first.
This is why I like this build so well. The procs can be insane sometimes. Like I just had a ton of earthquakes down. This part's kind of easy. You just have to dodge the tentacles. Interrupt the worms as always, like mentioned earlier. I think this mob just does a frontal cone, so as long as you're not melee, you don't have to worry about it, and if you're melee, just stand behind it. They did change this a little bit because there didn't used to be a worm there.
Planetary infection imminent.
On higher keys, those right there do a lot of damage. One of the things we messed up on is we should have used Bloodlust, or Hero as the Alliance call it, on another boss. Probably the first one. Even though it's not really needed, using it as much as possible to get the most use out of it is definitely good.
Virulent specimen detected. Containment priority 1.
Before you go down, it's also important, really important, to make sure you have enough of this. If not, you have to kill the boss and then go back out and kill some stuff at the start, which can cost you up to a minute or 2 in time. This boss is pretty simple as well. Just dodge your little circles in the room. Dodge the frontal cone. Unlike what I did. And pretty much just damage the boss.
Infected.
use a little circle to cleanse this buff off everybody, and you can cleanse the stuff on the floor. Whenever this bar fills up, it summons 2 ads. That guy right there will kill the ads. However, I think you do 3 sets, and then at the very end, you have to, you want to kill the 3rd set of ads. That way you can finish the boss off and not risk dying.
Cleansing area.
The healer can dispel that, however, you do have to watch it because the healer can only dispel it so often. That's why the little white circle is so important.
Sanitize.
I think usually groups kill the spores, but on this low key, there's no real point.
Contagion detected. Sanitize. Cleansing area.
If you have to, it's definitely more important to run to this than it is to do DPS. I'm not sure if we summoned the last set of ads yet. I don't see them.
Cleansing area.
And I died. That's not good. The main issue I have right now is if I reincarnate, I'm fairly certain I'll die.
Cleansing area.
I'm gonna wait. I especially can't right now because I have all these on top of me.
Contagion detected. Sanitize.
All they have to do is kill these ads and the boss dies. So that mob has that ad, and as long as they kill that ad, it's basically win-win. This is why this boss is so hard. Unfortunately, the tank kind of kept us in a small area. I mean, for high keys that might be important, but I mean he had all this space over here to work with.
Destroy virulent source.
But in the end, we killed it, so it doesn't really matter. We plus 3'd it. I don't really know what the time thresholds are. There are add-ons for that. Let's see. Do I get anything good? And I got gold. So we did a plus 6, I think I said this was. Yeah. Can't use either of those. 408 gear. That made my score go up to 812. I don't know what it was beforehand. This is something else that's important. When doing these, it helps for your weekly reset. You get to pick one item, and like right now I got a plus 9 as my highest, so I can get a 428 piece of gear. But it gives me 3 options. So if I do a bunch of plus 9s, like it gives more pieces of gear that you can pick from. Like this might be a piece of crap that I already have. Say it's a chest and I already have a 428 tier piece. Well, maybe I can go over here and get another 428 piece if I get a 9 in. And so on. It's good to do at least one key to give yourself a chance at loot per week, but you want to do the highest possible. I think it goes up to either 15 or 20 now. Mythic pluses can also be pretty short. Like this dungeon was 18, the entire video was 18 minutes. However, sometimes if you don't time them, like I did a freehold yesterday that wasn't timed, it can take up to 30 to 40 minutes. That's when you get to higher keys, you might have that. And then once you pass the timer, you go for completion. But that is the end of this video. That was a Underrot. I almost said freehold. That's an Underrot plus 6. Until my next Mythic Plus video.